Welcome to the Non-Wing Worldwide Podcast, hosted by Drake York.
We go to the infield and Drake York. Thanks a lot, Chad.
This is the Non-Wing Worldwide Podcast.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 2 of Non-Wing Worldwide. We brought in our first guest, none other than reigning USAC national champion, JG Justin Grant. Justin, how are you doing?
Good, Drake. How about yourself?
Oh, good. We're so happy to have you on as our first guest. We figured go big or go home, and especially in the world of non-wing sprint car racing, no one's bigger than yourself. But we got to talk about Eldora first. That was enjoyable for me to watch, both watching the race later and in person at Eldora. I mean, you smacked the wall. You hit it pretty good a couple times, and basically like killed the rear end of that race car. So what was that like, ripping around the fence at Eldora and picking up the win last Friday night?
Yeah, it was a ton of fun. I caught it pretty good sliding. I slid Cummins, and then was trying to get like circled back around him and caught it pretty good off of 2, and then it was pretty good after that. And then on the restart, I rolled up and kind of restarted like against the pile in 3 and 4. To make sure I got a good restart, and I'm pretty sure I like knocked the pile off the wall, because then I come blazing back around there and really smashed it, and then it cleaned the ladder out of it and everything, and then I was real tight, so then I kind of kept getting into it, but no, we had a really good race car, and it was fun. I was pretty comfortable getting in, fast and high, and was able to just make a lot of time around there.
So as we go from Eldora now to your earliest moments in racing, like I want to get a real grasp on what it was like to be young you when you were a kid. So what's your earliest memories of either sitting in the stands at a racetrack or even driving like a quarter midget or something like that? What's just in general your earliest memories in racing?
Yeah, just being really young and going to the races with my dad. He'd take me to Placerville and watch. We'd watch your dad. and yeah, just going racing with him and his buddies, and how big of fans that they were. And my dad never raced, but was a race fan, and so he'd take me with him and his friends, and just always thought that guys that drove sprint cars were the coolest people alive, and just always wanted to dreamed of getting in one. Then eventually my dad got me a quarter midget, and we started going and doing that. And just remember kind of beating up and down the road with him, and we would borrow my grandpa's pickup truck, and we'd throw a quarter midget in the back, and he'd set it sideways so like the front bumper and the back bumper would hit the bed rails, and then put a mattress in the bed. And we'd go racing for the weekend and throw the quarter midget out, and him and I'd sleep in the bed of the truck and go racing. And just remember how much fun that was, and being out under the stars, and then getting up in the morning and going racing. And it was just I thought it was a great time, and it was a great time. Had a ton of fun doing it, and really kind of got to love it there.
Yeah, I got to say, though, we'll talk about like your early years in Indiana here in a couple of minutes, but hearing you throwing a mattress essentially in the back of a pickup truck with your race car, that's one of the most Justin Grant things I've heard, other than some of your early years in Indiana. So like you got accustomed to that like hard knock lifestyle for a while, but you said you were a kid, you were having fun, you were driving a race car.
Yeah, absolutely. And then as we raced, our stuff kind of got nicer, and we got, ended up truck and trailer, and at one point we had a motor home, and but yeah, my dad was always good at scraping along and getting things put together and making things happen, and sometimes it was a little more work his way, but we'd get it done and get where we wanted to be.
So with that being said, you talked about racing quarter midgets when you were really young. What was next for you? Because I know a lot of kids in your region either went to outlaw carts or micros. And actually, now I remember where you came from. You're the forgotten outlaw cart kid, as I like to call you. So
yeah.
So what was that progression like for you? When did you and your dad decide to go outlaw kart racing, and why choose outlaw kart racing instead of something like a micro?
So we were racing quarter midgets, and a lot of guys were going out of quarter midgets into micros, and I think ultimately like we just really couldn't afford to go micro racing. They were a little bit more on the pricey end, and it all came bigger truck and trailer, bigger, everything was just kind of ramped up to go micro racing. And it was a little bit outside of our budget, I think. And so we were, if I remember right, we were out running quarter midgets, and we had met Jake Morgan and Gary Morgan. Jake was like getting into quarter midgets a little bit, and they were going and doing, but they were coming from like running box stock outlaw carts or something. They were doing both. So somehow or another, we ended up at the outlaw cart races watching that, and thought, boy, this is pretty cool. And so ended up going that route, and at that time you could get into an outlaw cart really, really cheap. And most of the guys, I would say, were like they were all like at least the Open 500 guys were kind of, all in their like mid 30s, early to mid 30s, and all kind of racing out of the back of a pickup truck. And they're just kind of the contrast from the micro thing to that was, we certainly were like, okay, that's somewhere we can go and go do that. And so we got a 125, went and did that for, I think I ran a season. I think I did the indoor, like the winter season in the 125. And then we got towards the end of that winter season, we got a 500. Ran that a little bit and really liked it. And then that following summer started running 500s at Cycle Land. And so I ran like maybe 2-3 years of outlaw carts. But with summer season and winter season, it ends up being quite a few races. So I ran Cycle Land, Red Bluff mostly, and then did some of the like the QRC tour they did at the time. They called it like the All-Star Tour or something. We'd go and do that stuff. And yeah, I'm kind of the forgotten cart kid. I kind of like moved through and then out like right before they got really, really popular.
Yeah, exactly. And you actually won like a big race in outlaw carts. You won the first West Coast Nationals, I believe it was, back when it was only open. Yeah. And like I find that crazy, because that race, like I went to it and worked it this year, and that race, even from when I left karting, like that race exploded. And the fact that no one talks about you being an outlaw cart kid, and everybody talks about Larson and Rico and those types of guys being outlaw cart kids, does it maybe bother you a little bit that you're not in that same conversation, that you came up through the ranks at Cycling and Red Bluff?
No, not really. I mean, it's more just a point of, something to kind of chuckle about that. But no, I was a little bit before they started kind of, like getting popular. Shoot, I was in, it was before social media and everything. Like I was in Indiana before we had Facebook. So, so there wasn't, unless you were at Red Bluff, you just didn't know. But yeah, it was really cool. We won the inaugural West Coast Nationals. I've actually got the Eagle. It's on my shelf right below my championship trophies. But yeah, it's pretty cool. I think we actually swept the whole thing. I think we won. I think we were quick time. I think we set track record and won the dash and won the feature and the whole thing. It was pretty cool.
Well, way to flex on them. So you get out of the carts, and then what's next for you? Because I know you picked up a BCRA midget title, which when you were running was still pretty darn big out in California. So was the midget first, and then did you get in an on-wing sprint car? What was that progression like out of the outlaw carts?
Yeah, so this is where really like we made bad decisions. Like we went all this way through it, and then we decided that we were going to get a pavement midget. Was going to be our next step. And my dad and I knew nothing about midgets, or I mean, we'd raced quarter midgets on pavement, I guess, but we didn't really know what we were doing at all. So my dad, my grandparents, a couple friends of his, everybody kind of got together and got this pavement midget. It was a beast pavement midget, had a Gertie in it. And we went and ran it, ran the BCRA stuff with it. And it was really kind of, they sort of told me like, hey, we've got like, a season, like we can do this for a season. And if you're good enough to do it, somebody will hire you. And if you're not, well, then there's no sense in us keep spending money to do it. So that was kind of the deal. And we kind of scraped along and tried to figure it out and made it through our first season. And And then at the end of the year, I had throughout the course of that year, I had met Dave and Wendy Thurston, who had the 17, like the hothead midget out there.
Oh yeah.
Yep. And so they actually hired me to run the following year, which would have been in '06, and they would have hired me to run in '07. And then we kept our pavement car another for that following season. And I ran our pavement car and Dave and Wendy's dirt car. And then yeah, we were able to win the BCRA title. And I think we won one race in my dad's car in our pavement midget, and won a couple with Dave and Wendy over, throughout the time out there. And yeah, and then jumped in. Then as it went, I would run Dave and Wendy's dirt car, and I jumped in Trace Van Dyne's pavement midget some. Ran for a guy named Paul Eskison. He had a number 10 car he put together that was really, really nice. I got to drive that some. But yeah, I got to run midgets out there a bit, and then I was working for Steve Harris at he had World Environmental, and Mike Henry drove his wing sprint car, and they'd run Placerville and Chico and all that. So I would work in the dumpster yard during the day, and then I'd work for the race team at night, and then on the weekends when I wasn't racing. So they ended up letting me put together. They had an old car. They let me put it together, put a 360 in it, and take it to Hanford. And so yeah, my first sprint car race was, I think it would have been 2008 at Hanford. So went down there and yeah, ran the first night, and then actually with the second night we went back the following weekend, and we won with it. It was cool. I actually like slid. I was like up over the infield berm and like doored Peter Murphy off the bottom, going into three, coming to the checkered, and we won. And he come like walking over in victory lane, and I was like, oh no, and he just like walked up and shook my hand. He was like, good job. I was like, whew, okay, cool. But now I watch Hanford, and I think maybe that's why the berm's so tall.
Yeah, old flashbacks of young Justin Grant kid right rearing you, or not right rearing you, but banging wheels coming to the checkered probably brought back some memories. So you said you're winning sprint car races, you're winning midget races, you're very successful in California, and realistically, you could have went the whole CRA USAC West Coast 360 route, but you didn't. You came out to the Midwest, and obviously it got you to where you are today. But what prompted that move initially?
Yeah, I didn't really. It wasn't like I was just like knocking them dead, like winning races left and right. So I won that second time out in the sprint car, but then the next time out we crashed it, and then I took it to Manzanita and crashed it again, and that was pretty much the end of that. And then the midget was like, really, we were pretty hit or miss. We'd win one here and there, but we weren't like really like knocking them dead. It wasn't like, oh boy, you got to, somebody's got to get this kid in a ride. It was kind of like, well, if he doesn't kill himself, he might end up okay at some point. But no, I had met a couple people, just from racing or whatever, and Bones Borscher was one of them. He had flown out to watch me, and I think he was working for MMI at the time, and they sent him out to check me out. And so got to meet him, got talking to him. Then at Chili Bowl, he took me around and introduced me to some people because we had talked, and I told him that I wanted to get to Indiana. And so one of the people he introduced me to is Jeff Walker. So Jeff was like, I don't really have anything you can drive. He's like, but I got a race team that you can work for me, and you can stay in the shop, and I'll give you like $300 a week, and maybe we'll get you in something. It's like, perfect, I'm there. So I packed my bag, and when I got back from Chili Bowl, I packed up and I moved to Indiana. That sounds like fun. I'll go do that.
Well, that's not the whole part of the story, because you get here and you land in the airport, and there is no guy out with a sign saying Justin Grant. In fact, there's nobody there to get you. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah. So I land and I call Walker, and in Walker's defense, right? Like we didn't really have like a very in-depth conversation. It was like somewhat in passing as I think about it. He was like, yeah, you can move in. I'm like, cool. Yeah, I'll come back. So I jump on the plane, I come back and I land and I call Walker and I'm like, hey, I'm here. And he's like, where? I'm like, I'm at the airport. And he's like, well, where are you going? I'm like, uh-oh. so he ends up, he's in Florida. So he's like, well, I'm in Florida, man. I won't be back for a couple of weeks. I'm like, shoot.
Oh,
So now what do I do? So the only other person I really knew was I knew Pat Sullivan. So I called Pat and Pat came and picked me up and let me live with him for a couple of weeks and gave me a truck to drive around and showed me where all the race shops were and where to go and who to visit and all that. So kind of got my feet wet and bounced around town a little bit, hung out with Pat, watched a bunch of old 16th Street Speedway VHSs and everything else he had.
yeah, Pat's a good person to live with if you like to know a lot of stuff. So the thing I didn't hear you say is that it was scary coming out here because you're by yourself. How old are you at this point?
I think I'm like just right 18. Like
Okay, so you're like
I
my
think
age.
I think I had turned like 18 November leading into Chili Bowl and then and then after Chili Bowl moved back.
Okay, so I'm 18 right now, and I personally couldn't bring myself to fly to meet this guy I barely know and live at his house and work on sprint cars. Was it ever scary for you at all? Because as the story goes, you can't obviously come here by yourself. You got like a change of two or clothes and a little bit of cash to your name. What is that like? I have to know. What is that like for an 18-year-old kid?
Well, I was I don't know. I was a pretty agricultural 18. I was I had been, previously to that, like I graduated when I was like 16. Um and I'd been working, living in West Sacramento, living with some buddies, working at the dumpster place. And just kind of I'd been on a little bit on my own, you know, um previously. Um and I don't know, I don't really remember it being that crazy. I had kind of growing up, I had kind of always been a little bit bouncing around and not totally with my parents all the time. Like I would go during the summers, I would live in Red Bluff when I was racing karts. I would live in Red Bluff with Carl Pavlik or with Gary Morgan, and work at QRC at the factory there during the day, and then get karts ready and go race on the weekend. And then there was a handful of years where I was, I would catch a ride up. This family would pick me up on their way up 99, and I would meet Gary would bring my cart to the track, and I'd meet Gary at the races, and we'd go racing, and then I'd catch a ride back home. So I was, I was 13, 14 years old at that point. So by the time I was, 17, 18 years old, I was ready to rock and roll. I was pretty free range as a kid.
Okay, so I can see how that's not as scary. But anyways, you get here, you get with Walker, and you settle yourself in Indiana. So both professionally and personally, how those first couple of years out in Indiana go?
I had an absolute blast. They were some of the funnest years I've had. Walker's a riot, and there was it was so it was myself, it was Derek Claxton, there was a kid named Kyle Dotrich, who he works for Andretti now. Then Hunter Schoenberg was driving a car a bunch, Chris Wyndham was driving a car a bunch, Brett Burdett was driving a car a bunch. Chris had a couple buddies that were around a fair bit, and so it was just Walker was a ton of fun, and then there was a bunch of guys that were all kind of around my age. Um, so and it was all people that were interested in the same thing I was interested in, and so personally, it was an absolute blast. I mean, part of the reason I just never went home was I was just having too much fun to go home. When I came back, it was kind of like I'm gonna come back and check it out for a few months and see if I can make something work back there, and just never left. But just because I was having so much fun, uh, you know, as far as professionally, like I didn't really get in a car much at all until I jumped in Don Moore's midget a couple times. Just like the 10, it's like a white white midget with a red number 10 on it. And he let me run his car a couple times. And then I jumped in, really kind of one of my like first like breaks a little bit was I had known Jack and JJ from being out in California and Arizona a little bit. And so JJ was going to be late for sprint week at Kokomo. So JJ or Jack came down and was like, "Hey, will you jump in this thing and just fire it off?" And I was there working on Walker's car, and I was like, "Yeah, sure." And he's like, "Just make sure it throttles a little, make sure it steers, make sure it stops. Like, we do not need to go, do not go run this thing." I'm like, "Okay." So he walks back to the car, and Jeff's like, "Go run that thing." I'm like, okay. So I get in it and I'm just flailing the thing around there. And I think we were quick time, sprint week hot laps to Kokomo. And then JJ showed up and went like 30-second quick. And and so everybody's like, "Who is that?" And they a bunch of people, they all just called me little JJ for like 2 years. But so that was really kind of one of my first like times to really get in a sprint car. So then Jeff was actually like, I think he was like, "Oh, okay, like he can actually make circles." And so a little time went on, and he ended up putting me in a car, for a weekend, and we went to. It was just local stuff, but man, the local stuff was tough back then. Like there wasn't as many USAC races, so there was always a lot of guys there. But we ran like fifth at Gas City, and then went and like I led a bunch of Kokomo and ended up crashing. And then he let me run a few more times, and then I ended up getting in the right at the end of the year. I got in the Baldwin car, and they hired me for 2010, and then I was off and racing.
And at that time too, you're still, I hate to say like working for peanuts, but like, you're still scraping through everything, and you're trying to figure stuff out. And I think a lot of people actually still look at that hot lap run at Indiana Sprint Week, probably the most historic hot lap run in the history of non-wing sprint car racing, because like you said, that was your first big break in a sprint car. Did you ever feel like you were struggling at that point in time to, piece together rides, or were you just still that happy-go-lucky kid that was like, I think you said like 3 or 4 times you're like, okay. So were you still kind of that happy-go-lucky person when you were trying to find rides, and did you find it struggling?
Yeah, no, I certainly was. I mean, I remember being like, at times being frustrated, right? Like calling car owners and trying to get in stuff and just like getting no after no after no, and just kind of like, man. Um, but I think if I'd have been in a different environment, right? Like just being with Walker and those guys it was just so much fun that like, it's a bummer that's not working out, but this is still a lot of fun. And, didn't really have any bills, and it just, I was making more money than I was even though I wasn't really making much money, I was making more money and I was spending, and life was good. Um, I was kind of just pumped to be sprint car racing, whether I was driving or at the races. But no, I certainly remember being like a bit frustrated and thinking about whether or not I should go home and all of that. But just always kind of ended up just the fun always outweighed it, so I just always stayed. I remember the first time I was driving, I drove Don Moore's midget, and we go to Granite City, and we get rained out at Granite City. I got this old Pontiac Sunfire, so I sleep in the Pontiac Sunfire that night. We go to Little Belleville the next day, race Little Belleville. I think we get caught up in a crash and come back through and run like 10th or something at a Power Eye show, right? So he peels me off my cash, and I've got $150 or whatever. And by the time I drove out there, ate off of, somebody had given me a McDonald's like coupon book, so I could get
Oh my goodness.
I could get like 2 hamburgers for $1 or whatever it was. Like, so I would get as many as I could get on my coupon book, and then I'd save them and just heat them up. And by the time I drove out there, got fuel, did all the thing, got my pit passes, made it home. I think I made like $12 or $14 or something. And I was like, Yes, I am a professional race car driver. Like, I made money racing.
It's funny you mentioned that because you were talking about my dad earlier. I think he went through a similar phase. So it's funny to hear somebody else say that. And you talk about that struggle, but here you are still laughing about it while you're saying that you're frustrated, but today you're laughing about it. Did you really enjoy the struggle, the grind, and the pursuit of glory in those times?
Yeah, I did. I really did. And I was always at that time. I'm not much anymore, but I used to be a bit. I used to be a big reader. So I'd always have a book with me. Like if I was traveling down the road, I'd have a book, and I was always reading races. I loved reading. I'd read a bunch of racing books. And so, like reading Tony Stewart book and reading all that. And so a lot of it, like, and as I've gotten older, I've found out that like, it's actually like a kind of a technique that people use. But, I was in my mind, I was always like, when things were like going like super off the rails, it was like, man, if I like, when I make it and I write my book, this is going to be great for the book. So like anything that went wrong, I was almost like, I almost enjoyed it because I'm like, oh, this is going to be great for the book.
So it's safe to say when the Justin Grant book comes out, it's going to be a must buy type book just for the stores, right?
Yeah, possibly. There'd be a lot of ways to hack your way through.
All right.
It'd
Well,
be
if Dave
like a help
Harderbright's
guide.
listening, we need a Justin Grant book in 10 years. That leads me to my next point. You, like, I'm sure people watching already can tell you're a great storyteller. There is at least 100, if not more, interesting stories about you. So my personal favorite Justin Grant story is the night you flipped out of the ballpark at Terre Haute and landed on something you shouldn't land on. I'm going to leave it there and toss the ball on your court. So what happened that night at Terre Haute?
Yeah, so I'm like we were running Terre Haute, and I was kind of like I was fading a little bit. It's my first time there, and this is my first time there. We were actually, I think we were quick time, and so we make it through our heat race, and then I'm like I'm fading in the feature. I'm fading, and I fade to like ninth or 10th or something, and I'm like, ah, you need to just quit. You need to quit just being scared. Like you need to run this thing down in there, which was never the answer. I always thought that was the answer when I was that age. It was like, well, you're just not running it hard enough. It was never the answer. I was always already running it too hard. So I like muster the courage up. I run this thing down into one, and it gets up on the bike and snags the front and flips and out into the ballpark or out of the ballpark, and I end up landing on this guy's Buick, and it like blew the left rear tire off of the wheel when it went out of there, and the wheel had like gone through his windshield, and it was like running. I kind of like get my bearings right, like I get my marbles a little bit, and it's like running laps between the A pillars, like the right rear tires on the hood, and the wheel is in the windshield, and it's just going because it throwing the motor forward. It was hung wide open.
There's some good stories from the day you drove the Hery 40. You don't have to give us all the crazy ones because we don't want to get you in trouble or anything. But what is one of the craziest stories from that period of your life?
The probably the best like racing story with the Hery 40 was we would just get racing and just keep racing. He was a machine, and I was excited to go racing, and so we ran Gas City on Friday night. We were rolling really good at Gas City at the time. We might have won. So we're in Gas City Friday, then we go to Lawrenceburg Saturday. We run there. Then we get back. We run back up towards his house. We run Waynesfield on Sunday for the Jack Hewitt Classic, and we run second at the Hewitt Classic. I think we may have won like one Gas City, one Lawrenceburg, ran second at the Hewitt Classic because we were like, we must have been rocking and rolling because we decided, all right, we're going to go to Knoxville. Well, Knoxville, this is Sunday. Then Knoxville's Monday. And so we leave the Hewitt, we go back to Harry's house. I roll it out of the trailer and wash it and we tore a little bit of stuff up, start fixing stuff. Harry goes in and takes a nap, comes out, we load up and just start jamming to Knoxville. So we run straight through. I haven't been to bed yet. We leave. So I crawl in the back, go to sleep while Harry drives. We run straight to Knoxville. We get there just in time for like driver's meeting. Unload thing, run Knoxville. I don't think we weren't very good at Knoxville. But then so then we're leaving Knoxville, and Jeff Walker's like standing. No, everybody's like, let's go to the Dingus. Let's go to the Dingus. We're like, no, we're going to bed. We're tired. So we're leaving. Jeff Walker's like standing in the road, flagging us down. So we're like, well, we'll go in for one drink. So we go in, close the Dingus, and then the next, I think it'd be the next day, we ran Oskaloosa. To go to Oskaloosa, and we were actually pretty fast at Oskaloosa, and then I like tagged the fence off of I think that would have been the year. I tagged the fence off of 2 and crashed the thing down the backstretch, and loaded up and headed home, and then got everything ready to go again the next weekend. But we would go on just trips where we were just race and just him and I, and it was a lot of fun.
You guys were madmen back in the day. That's fair to say, right? Like, that is utterly insane. Not only to race that much in the span of a week, which you do during sprint week, but it's all in one state. You guys, I think you mentioned right there, I think it was Gas City, Lawrenceburg, Waynesfield, and Knoxville. 2 of those are kind of close to each other, and then you got Knoxville. Or actually 3 of those are fairly close to each other. So I guess physically, what was that week like? Because you race those 4 races, but you're also working on the car, you're maintaining it. You got to sleep in the truck, so that was nice. Just what do you remember the most about that week?
So funny. Like, I remember we had one Kenny Chesney CD, and we listened to it from the time we got in the truck to go to Gas City to the time we got back from Oskaloosa. It was just one Kenny Chesney CD, like 8 songs on repeat. But no, I mean, the Hery years were fun. Just I'm tired a lot. Just we partied a lot and pretty hard, and just I think I'm still probably recovering from some of those years.
Well, I hope the recovery is going well. But speaking of crazy things that you've done, I believe it was 2013. You had an extreme impromptu ride for the Hoosier 100, and probably did some things you weren't proud of, safety-wise. So what do you remember about 2013 Hoosier 100?
Yeah, so I was there working on Aaron Pierce's car for Scott Bennick, and all of a sudden Hampshire comes down and he's like, hey, you got to go run this guy's car. I'm like, okay, like we had just gotten done kind of qualifying and we were getting ready for the feature. So I'm like, well, let me finish buttoning things up here and I'll be down. So we get things kind of buttoned up there, you go down, and this guy's like, yeah, if you want to drive it, you can drive it. He was an older guy and he had qualified it and just didn't, he's like, I don't think I need to be out there. So he's like, I'm like, yeah, okay, I'm in. He's like, all right. He's like, well, go get your gear and your seat. And I was like, I don't have any of that. I was like, I'll just use yours. And he's like, okay. So he gets undressed. I throw his stuff on, and he was quite a bit bigger than I was. And yeah, we packed me in the seat with like shipping blankets and towels and stuff. And the problem is those miles, like your head gets to like buffeting, which isn't terrible, but the helmet was too big. So instead of like my head, like instead of my neck, like taking it, like it was just like bashing the helmet off of the sides of my head. And I'm like, I'm not going to make it, you know? So we got a yellow, and I yanked the thing out of gear and slow down real quick and unbuckle and get all the towels out from under me and throw them over the infield wall and buckle back in and take off. And I would like run down the straightaway, like, so I could get my head down out of the air. And then we'd get to the corner and I'd like push myself up in the seat and like steer so I could see the inside rail. And then we'd get off the corner and I'd drop back down. And yeah, we started last because I didn't qualify. And I think we ended up 4th. We ran the thing clear up through there. And then I got $100 for hard charger, and I left it in the guy's suit pocket on accident.
So your message here is kids don't try that?
Yeah, no, you don't want to.
Okay.
You're going really, really fast.
On to another subject. People these days really know your connection to Bubby Jones through your wife, Ashley. First off, I love the story of how you guys met. So can you tell our viewers that?
Yeah, just from racing around and yeah, we kind of ran around in the same friend group and all that.
Did you meet Bubby before you and Ashley started dating?
Yeah. I knew basically her whole family before I knew her. So I had met Bubby. I had met Bubby. I think I met him. Right, the first I had met him a couple times. So the first time I really like interacted with him was probably 2011 or 12. I got to talking to him a little bit, and yeah. So I'd known him for quite a few years. I knew Rip fairly well out on the West Coast. Had met him some, and her brothers Tony and Davey, obviously, and everybody.
Um, so then that leads me to my next question. What was it like to meet Bubby then as Ashley's boyfriend?
Yeah, he
Was he the
is.
same guy at that point, or was he like one of those father-in-laws that's like, I don't like you, or what was that like?
No, he just never. I mean, he never said much anything either way. Anyways, it's very just okay. But yeah, no, he was always really friendly, always really cool to me, and yeah, never an issue there.
Okay, because that was one thing I was dying to know before we talked to you today. And then too, like you talk about it all the time in your interviews. Bubby has helped you so many ways in your career. When you first met him, or when you and Ashley were dating, was he willing to give you advice, or was that something that kind of took time?
Yeah, no, he was. So when I was like before we started dating, when I was around him, I obviously like would ask him, and he would, and I think kind of early on he kind of you know picked up a little bit that I was somewhat switched on and was asking questions that were worth asking. So he would help me a little bit, but then once we started dating and really once we started like kind of living together, and because and then I first when we first lived together I moved in with Ashley to her parents' house. We were living upstairs at Bub and Patty's. So it was like over breakfast cereal in the mornings. He'd be like, "Hey, you got that thing all screwed up," and because he never said screwed up. And and he'd tell me how to fix it and what was wrong with it, and and he could watch a car like and tell you he could watch, and he'd tell me to do something, and I wouldn't listen. And then I'd come back and he'd have watched it on TV and he'd be like, "Hey, you put this bar in instead of this bar, didn't you?" I'm like, "Man, how do you know that?" But he was so good at watching a car, he could pick it up and just even sitting at home on TV. So there was quite a few years where he was helping me a ton, just staying at home watching on Flow, and I'd be texting Patty, Ashley's mom, and she'd be talking above and texting me back and and uh, and trying to help get me going.
Just a quick jump to the present. The sprint car you're running now, you said at Hobstad a couple weeks ago, is built to Bubby's specs. So, in a way, would you say that's like your Jones family heirloom?
Yeah, no, it's been really cool to kind of do that project over the winter, and it's been really really good. So that's also really cool. But no, but Bub had been on me, for years that's what I needed to build, and this is how you need to run it, and this is and these are the motors you need, and all of this, and it's while I'm kind of like ride hopping and doing like bouncing in and out of rides, and I'm like, yeah, that's sounds fantastic, right? Like I can't just roll in and buy motors and build new cars and do all these things. And then as I started driving for Top, he was on me that that's what we needed to do, but I wasn't in charge, and they had a guy kind of take care of things, and so now I'm in a position that I can do those things and make those decisions with Top Motorsports, and unfortunately, like Bub passed before I was able to kind of be in that position. So I wish he was still around. Like he'd be enjoying that we're finally getting to do it. Um, but yeah, but it's neat for me to finally get to do all the things that he told me I needed to be doing.
Absolutely, and it's worked out for you so far. You won twice, but now let's go back in time to around 2016. Overall, things just don't seem to be working out for you. You think about quitting. What prompted you to even consider that?
I was just struggling, right? Like just not, and at this time, right? Like, so when I'm younger and I'm not making any money, well, I'm not spending any money either. So it's fine, you know? Well, now it's, fast forward, I've got rent and car payment and, me and Ashley are dating and she's got Brogan and we're all living in, at this point now, we've got a house that we're living in and, we're all living together. And so I've got, some responsibility now and, just not making money, not running good, not just, and getting hurt and it's just not good, and and then Ashley got pregnant with the twins, and so that really prompted like, well, this just isn't going to work, um, like, and I can't just be, you know, deadbeat. So I'm like, well, I'm gonna have to find something to make some money, and this just isn't it, I don't think, and I think I've kind of reached the end of my abilities here, and so I figured, well, it's probably time to give this up and go a different road, and so we end up telling, we tell Ashley's parents that we've got the twins coming, and I told Bob that, like, I'm gonna, I got this job lined up and I'm gonna go do that instead, and if I can race a little bit here and there, maybe, but I'm gonna go to work, and he's like, well, that's stupid. Like, you need to just go win races. I'm like, yeah, well, that sounds great, but
But then the crazy stuff happens. Correct me if I'm wrong, but the thing that really tipped off that big comeback for you was the McGee ride. If I remember correctly, it was going to be only a local show that you were running for them as like a fill-in driver, and then
yeah.
you go national with it. Like, you guys are running good at the national races. So first off, tell us how that deal even began with McGee, and then what followed.
So this kind of goes long, and I'm not really running much sprint car stuff, and I'm starting to run a little bit of Silver Crown stuff still, and the McGee's call me and asked me to come run Bloomington for him. Max couldn't come for whatever reason, and so I told him no, I didn't want to. And Ashley's like, well, what was that about? I was like, it was the McGee's called. They wanted me to run their car at Bloomington, and she's like, well, that's good stuff. You should go run it. Like, if they don't have anybody tomorrow, I'll call them back and I'll go run it if they don't have anybody. So I call them Friday morning and I'm like, hey, you find anybody to drive that thing? And they're like, no. And I'm like, all right, I'll come run it. So I go down there and we win Bloomington, which was, it was a local show, but at the time, like, I wasn't winning anything. And so I was pumped about it. And so we get done and they're like, well, you want to go to North Dakota? Or Huset's in South Dakota. Yeah, to the Dakotas. And so they're like, hey, you want to go to Huset's? I'm like, sure. So I call Ashley. I'm like, hey, I'm not coming home. I'm going to Huset's. So we go to Huset's and we run for, it was like they had some big race up there. It was like 50,000 to win. And we go up the first night, we run second or third. And then the next night we run second to Base Loop. And shoot, I think it was like 10 or 15 grand to run second. And I think it was 10 grand to win the first night, maybe 5 to run second or something. So we left Houston. So we'd won like right around $20,000. So I left there with like 10 grand in my pocket. Like, I haven't made this much money, like, all right. My pocket's full again. And so I was supposed to be at work that Monday, and Houston's was Saturday, Sunday. And so I call the guy I was going to go drive dump trucks. And so I call the guy that I'm supposed to be at work for. I'm supposed to be there at like 5:30 in the morning. I call him at like 4:30 in the morning, driving home, and I'm like, hey, I'm not going to make it in, And he's like, yeah, I know. I watch the races. He's like, that's all right. He's like, you're a race car driver, not a dump truck driver. I'm like, all right, thanks, man. So he was really cool. It was actually Bob Fox, who's a sponsor on Baldwin stuff, the Fox paving. But he was really cool. He's like, hey, if you ever get in a pinch, give me a call. And so then we left there. The next weekend we went to Eldora for Four Crown, and we won the sprint car portion of Four Crown. And then that kind of wrapped up our year. And then, so yeah, I went from being like pretty much done to like holy cow, we're rocking and rolling, we're up front and everything. So I'm kind of back to thinking, okay, like I can do this. And then they let me know that they want to run the full USAC schedule the following year. And I'm like, heck yeah, I'm into that. And so then we go into the winter, go into Chili Bowl, and I'm not going to Chili Bowl because Ashley's got the twins coming, and I can't really, I don't know when exactly they're going to be, and I can't really commit to anybody. And so she has Monday of Chili Bowl, I think it was, and Tim Clausen calls me, and they've got an opening for their team for the first year of CMR at Chili Bowl, and they had something came up, and they needed somebody to fill a seat, and I was like one of the few guys that wasn't already in a car, So he calls me and asked me if I want to come down and run it, and I'm like, well, I'm gonna have to talk to Ashley. And he's like, well, I kind of need to know, like, we're trying to find somebody, like, it's kind of, and I'm like, well, I'm not waking her up. So when she wakes up, I'll let you know. And so I call him back. I talk to Ashley, and I'm like, hey, Clausen called and wants me to go run everything in Chili Bowl. And she's like, well, you got to go do that. I'm like, all right, I'll see you later. So my dad was in town. My mom and dad were in town for the kids coming. And so my dad and I jumped in. I told him, I was like, I won't be there till Friday. And he's like, yeah, okay, we'll get your day moved to Friday. And so Thursday night, my dad and I jumped in the car and jammed down there and raced. And I rolled in and won our prelim night, and we ran third on Saturday. And then a week or two later, they told me that they wanted to run the full USAC season with me. And so I went from being like, not really doing much anything to full-time sprint car ride, full-time sprint car or midget ride. And then I was doing the Silver Crown deal with Chris Carley. So had the full Silver Crown deal, and yeah, it was kind of like, went from being on the couch to kind of being, one of the top guys in the matter of a couple, over the course of a few races.
Yeah, and that's just one of the many crazy things I find about your career is that you were so close. I mean, you were that close away from saying, "Oh, I'm done. I'm gonna be, as you say, an adult, and I'm gonna go drive a dump truck." Then all of a sudden, you're winning USAC national races. You're winning Chili Bowl prelims, and you're running up front at the biggest races in the world. How big of a whirlwind was that for you, that entire season of 2016 and going into 17?
Yeah, it was wild. Like it was pretty, it was a whirlwind. I remember I went like Chili Bowl after, I think it was after my prelim night. Like you go in the press room, right? And like there's like the bathroom in there, and I was just going to the bathroom like crying for a while, like, because it was just crazy that, I was like, this is like kind of everything I had wanted, right? And like I was so close to just walking away from it. So I don't know if there's a moral. It's, just be dumb enough to keep going a little bit longer.
So we moved from 2017 to 2020. At this point, you got pretty solid rides across the board. You're full-time in sprint cars with Top. You're in the Hemmelgar 91 full-time at this point. Not a full-time midget driver, but you're winning races in all three at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And then you win that Silver Crown title in 2020. I know it was a shortened season, but how much did that title like legitimize your entire career? And do you think that title just put you even more on the map?
Yeah, I think it was, it was certainly kind of a feather and something that I could point to and say, well, I went back there and did something. But at the time, in the moment, I was so focused on the sprint car and the sprint car title that I almost didn't really even enjoy it. We started out 2020 really hot with the sprint car and kind of fell apart as the year went. So by the time we wrapped up the Silver Crown title, we kind of knew that the sprint car title was out of our grasp. And it was almost just, I think it was honestly, I was more disappointed about the sprint car title than I was happy about the Silver Crown title. You know, when I moved back here, it was for sprint cars. I came back here to do sprint cars, and in my scope, the biggest thing was the sprint car title. And I thought that was, you know, I'd been really close in 17 and lost it, and I thought 20 was the year that we were going to have it wrapped up. And so I was honestly probably just too disappointed about that to even enjoy the crown title, which sounds bad, you know, but that's kind of what it was. You know, looking back on it now, it's certainly special, and to be able to kind of sneak it in the middle of Cody's reign was really cool too. So we you know, it's definitely an accomplishment, and something that I'm proud I was able to do with Dennis and Himmelgarn Motorsports, and but yeah, at the time I was just so focused on that sprint car title, and just so mad about the way that the season had kind of unfolded, and things that kind of went wrong on our end, that were probably in our control, that we didn't do a good job of, that I wasn't really, wasn't generally very enjoyable at that time.
Yeah, and it's so fascinating for me to hear about that, because you'd think, you know, you'd be over the moon about the crown title, but the sprint car stuff was obviously still weighing heavily on your mind. And um, 21 didn't work out. You mentioned 2020 didn't go the way you wanted it to, and I believe you mentioned earlier too with McGee, you got it close a couple times to the title. It just never really worked out. But last year was your year. And did you do anything different behind the wheel to your race program, or mentally, that aided you to that championship last year?
Yeah. So with our race program in 21, we moved after 20. We kind of got rid of the guy that had been taking care of the cars in Rochester for Top Motorsports, and moved the team to to my shop in Indianapolis. And we hired Dylan Cook to come and work with me, and run the, you know, he more or less runs the day to day of the team. Um, and so hiring him on was huge, and getting the stuff down, to where it was, you know, him and I working on it, and kind of taking the reins of the team a bit. Um, that was a big move towards being able to win a championship. So 21, we were, you know, we had some really good moments. We won a lot of races. We had some ebbs, you know, that things didn't go as well. Um, but there were things that we could build on and improve on, and all things that we sat down and looked at over the winter, and went to work on cleaning up, and trying to be better in those areas, and really focus on trying to be better in some of the racetracks that we weren't, that were our struggle spots. You know, some of the slower, dirtier, dustier racetracks where you couldn't go pound the wall down. Went to work on finding some setup stuff, and refining our race cars a little bit to allow me to do some of that a little bit better. Um, which, having all that down here, and having him, you know, working hard for me, was big going into 2022. Then having the support of Kevin Birchmeyer, is always, you know, every year he's been super supportive. But so going into 2022, I knew our program was in the best place it could be. And so I kind of really went to work on trying to get myself in the best place I could be. So really went to work, on the mental aspect of things, over the winter of 21, 22, and then all year, you know, and still it kind of continues on now, right? But yeah, certainly trying to kind of not necessarily change my mindset, but change how I respond to certain things. You know, when things were well, and I was rocking and rolling, like you couldn't beat me, you know. But when things would start to go wrong, right, those were the days where then I was beating myself more than anybody was beating me. In my, you know, so it wasn't about getting better so much as it was about, like, getting less bad at things, right? My highlights were already good. Like I could go out and I could do the good things well, and I could capitalize on the good days well. Um, but the days that started to go bad, a lot of times they would either continue to go bad or get worse. And so really working on cleaning up those, those days where things don't go your way and you end up 15th. They need to be days that don't go your way and you end up fifth. um and a lot of that for me was mindset stuff more so than race car stuff. So yeah, just it was a lot of things. It was a lot of technical things, a lot of team structuring, and then a lot of me mentally as well. So yeah, it's tough to win a championship. You got to have it all. You got to have it all locked up pretty tight. And so we went to work on everything that we could control. And we put together a really good year, and with the things that we could control, and a lot of things that weren't really in our control kind of helped fall our way as well. So it just kind of all came together for us.
I want to go back to what you said about the mental aspect of it. And I think that's a part of racing and a part of sports. A lot of people don't think about, or they don't talk about a whole lot. So, um, you talked about trying to change your mindset and not beat yourself up. How hard is that actually to do, to change your mindset? Because I assume at that point, like, your whole life you've been wired that way, that you obviously do want to be the best and you've worked and willed yourself to become the best. But how hard is it to kind of like twist that mindset you've had your entire life into something more positive?
Yeah, it is hard, right? And yeah, you have, like you touched on, it's the way you've been your whole life. And it's a lot of habits, it's a lot of patterns, and a lot of it stems from trying to be your best, right? Like you're so focused on trying to accomplish something and be your best, and you kind of, but you tend to develop these habits, right? And the best way I can describe it is like you're like driving, like when you're driving in the snow, and like there's like tire tracks already, and it kind of wants to pull, like you wants to like keep your car in those tire tracks, right? And then you can steer out of them, but then it always wants to pull you back into them, right? It's kind of how your mindset and your habits end up being. Is like they're like the run in ruts in the snow, where it's like, yeah, you can, but it's constant work to stay out of those ruts. And eventually, every now and then they pull you back into one, right? And you're like, oh, yep, nope, we don't want to do that. We gotta get back over here. So yeah, it is hard. It's hard to do that, especially when, like you said, like they're habits you've had your whole life. But you look, it's like anybody that's really good at anything, whether it's, they all have a mindset. And whether it's something that they just, accidentally ended up with, which is pretty unlikely, or something that they really, really worked at, to develop. They right, like they say, like winners know how to win, and losers know how to lose. And so developing a mindset that's what you do is you go out and win, and even on the days that you can't win, you still figure out how to quote unquote win. So yeah, it's process, it's work, I've found it's as much work as the race car side of things is. But it's helped me a lot, just, even in my personal life, right? Like it's helped me a ton there. So it's been a well rewarding process. I'm happy that I've done it, and I'm happy that I've had the help along the way to do it. I've Kevin at Motai has been a big asset for me on that journey. And then obviously my wife, for dealing with me.
I'm sure it doesn't take a lot to deal with you, but that's so awesome to hear you talk about your mental journey and your mental preparedness. Something I love hearing about. Doesn't matter, what you drive or what sport you're in. But a little bit ago, you touched on Dylan Cook, and for the most part at the racetrack, some nights it is the story. It's a two-man band at Top Motorsports. It's you, the driver, but also you working on the race car. and it's Dylan Cook working on the race car along with you and kind of crew chiefing the car along through the night. So what does that say about you and the team, or you and Dylan, I should say, of how well you guys work together? Because you look at other national cars and there's 4 or 5 guys crewing on a single car.
Yeah, him and I work really, really well together. And we get along. We do our, we're both there to do our job, and we both take it very, very seriously. And we just kind of get in and get it done. And him and I are pretty efficient. Like we can work pretty efficiently. We've both been doing it a long time, and worked on a lot of stuff, and just the level of organization that he has is a big part of that. Like when you go to grab a tool, it's there. When you go to do, if you've got a project that you need to, if there's something that needs done, that all the parts and pieces are ready, and everything's just so organized that it really allows us to kind of breeze through our nights a little bit smoother than a lot of teams maybe. And just his preparation leading into the week, where he's got all his tires for the weekend are already done, sized, ready to mount. So everything is just really streamlined. It's a lot of hours and a lot of work on the shop side to be organized and be prepared. And he takes the majority of that workload is on him. There's certain weeks where I'm not even in the shop because I'm off midget racing or crown racing or whatever. So we kind of split things up. We kind of stay in our realms, right? Like I don't ever really even ask or know anything that's going on with whether we have tires, need tires, what size this tire is. Like I don't, and as far as, I never ask, is this in the trailer? Do we have that? Do we need more of these spares? Like he's got all of that just on lock. And then I just kind of focus on taking care of the engines, doing engine maintenance, tuning on fueling, keeping track of, when engines need to come and go and all of that. That's kind of in my realm. And then, yeah, like I said, like the bulk of the work falls on him, bulk of the labor and bulk of the organization and all of that. And then the bulk of the setup and tuning and stuff, is on my shoulders. I kind of set my stuff up and tune it. And we've really gotten, when Dylan first came, it was 100% just me telling Dylan what we needed to do, setup wise, as we've raced together and worked together. And now we really kind of, I'm able to use his eyes outside of the car, get his opinion on what he thinks. And he's able to tell me when, like I'm starting to get a little off and do something maybe we shouldn't be doing to the car. And he's able to now be like, I don't really think we should do that, and so that's been a really cool, transition. It's been cool to see him, become more comfortable, like around the setup aspect of things. And he's really sharp and he's got good eyes for it. So he's an asset now in that regard as well. But he's an absolute machine. Like he works as hard as 2 or 3 guys. Like he's just got no quit in him. So we're able to keep it a pretty small crew, and then we've got Kevin Birchmeyer who owns Top, and Jerry. They come on the road with us now and then, and hang out and help scrape a little mud and push cars and that sort of thing. And now and then when we get to sprint week, a lot of times we'll like sprint week or Pennsylvania, if we can, we'll find somebody to come with us. And it doesn't really alleviate anything off of Dylan's plate. It just alleviates a bit off of my plate. Like it keeps it to where I don't have to go to the car wash at night. Which is really the biggest thing, right? Like when we get somebody to come and help us, it just means I don't have to go to the car wash after the races, and I can sleep in a little bit in the morning, and they can get the car out and get started. But when it's just 2 of us, we're we're rolling to the car wash after the races, and then we're back up in the morning getting after it again. And it's just kind of the way we operate, and the way we enjoy it, I guess.
And you're rocking the NOS hat, and they have been behind you for quite some time now. They sponsor all three
Yeah.
of your USAC national cars, even a couple wing races like that wing race you did at Hobstadt a
Hmm.
couple weeks ago. What's it like to have the unwavering support of a big company like NOS and basically any type of racing you do?
Yeah. Having NASA's support has been huge. They really kind of came in just right as my career was starting to turn around and take off, and have been with me since. And yeah, it's been awesome. Just being able year after year, kind of know like you've got a primary sponsor, and the teams are going to be able to be funded and run up and down the road, and that takes a huge burden off of my back and the car owners' backs. And yeah, it's been awesome, and having their support, having the support of Lauren Albano, who obviously is NOS, as far as motorsports, and we all know, having her support is awesome. And it's really become more than a sponsorship, right? We've got her support. She wants us to do well, and cares about us. And I'm really, really fortunate that across everything now I'm kind of in positions like that. Like all of my car owners, I feel like care about me personally, right? NOS Energy Drink, Lauren Albano, she cares about me personally. Almost all the sponsors that I have on the side of our car are all the sponsors that I have on the side of our cars, all the people I drive for, all of my crew, like they're all people that I consider friends, and not necessarily people that like I have to do business with, which for the majority of my career was not that way, right? They were necessary evils, or people that I needed to deal with to do what I wanted to do. Where now across the board, I'm doing what I want to do with the people that I want to do it with. And so that's really, really fun, and puts me in a really, really good place to go out and win races. And yeah, and that all really kind of NOS has kind of been the hub. NOS and Lauren Albano have kind of been the hub of that whole wheel.
One thing that stands out to me about the sponsorship, not only with you, but all the other NOS drivers, is they have you do a bunch of random, I almost want to call it stunt shows. I remember one year you got to do a commercial shoot at Calistoga of you just ripping the sprint car around. It looked like almost as hard as you could go. And then they had the trust drivers where they blindfolded one guy, and the other guy told him where to go. I think
Yeah.
you were pretty animated in that. And then I think it was last year they had like that race at the speed room with all those different cars. So obviously it's a partnership, and it's one way to make your racing world go around. But how fun is it to have a sponsor that's willing to do crazy stunts with you like that?
Yeah, those are fun. We do like one a year, and go out and just, yeah, they just put us in just different scenarios, and really we just let us have fun, and capture it on camera and turn it into something. And so it's yeah, those are a ton of fun. They've been really cool. Like for us, it's we're just a bunch of idiots that go and hang out and jump in what they tell us to jump in, and go smash around. But it's been really, really cool to like be introduced to that world a little bit, like the filmmaking and commercial making and all that, and just everything that goes into it. It's absolutely insane, like how many bodies it takes to make one of those shoots happen, and how much coordination, on Lauren's end, like to bring all of that together, and make it happen. That's been really cool to go and kind of be involved in some of those, and just to see like some of the workings, and how all of that goes on. And it's funny now, like when I watch like shows, like they're like my little girl, she likes these baking shows. And so they'll do like, when they do like the host will say something, and then they do like the pan across reactions. and like the people reacting. And I'm like, I always lie to my wife. I'm like, that's like the 14th time they've reacted to that sentence. Like, so it's been cool to get to do some of that. And then like, when we're like watching stuff and it pops up on a commercial, right? The kids are all excited. They're like, oh, you're on TV. So it's been cool. It's they're fun for us just to go smash around and be idiots, but they're really interesting on another level.
Well, that's good to hear that they are as fun as they look, because I am by no means a professional race car driver. I want to go smash around in a school bus at the speed drum. So jealous of all you guys that get to do that. But one thing I think that makes you such a marketable driver for NOS, I don't know if it's marketable because you're damaging a product, but the can smash on your helmet, I think that is one of the coolest celebrations in racing. First off, how did you even come up with that? Because I feel like if I was sponsoring a driver, I wouldn't want them to destroy my product in victory lane. So not only how did you come up with it, but did you have to like pass a test with Lauren or something? How did that work?
So we were actually, funny enough, me and KT and Jason McDougall were all riding together on a midget swing. And we were all just like showing up and driving. None of us were working on anything. So the three of us jumped in a car and headed out to Kansas and Missouri and all these places. And the one day we had one day off, so I'm in the back on the way out, and I'm looking up. So I find this lake, and I call the marina, and I talk them into renting me this pontoon boat that they have at the marina. They didn't have anything for rent, but I talk them into like renting me one of theirs for the day. So we get there, and it was like this total dump of a pontoon boat. But we're out on the lake all day, and we're drinking a few beers and swimming and hanging out, and somebody, I think it was McDougall, like he's like, throw me a beer. So we like throw him a beer. Well, he takes it, and like the kids will like take and like smash a beer like open on their head and then like chug it, like. And so we're laughing about, like, we're all out there laughing. We're like, all right, well, like whoever wins next. And we had been like we were all on the podium like every night, the three of us, like we were all like in different orders on the podium all this whole swing. So we're like, all right, whoever wins next, just got to do that. Like, got to take on and do it. And I was like, all right, if I do it, I'll do it with an NOS can. And so I won the next night. And so, all right, here we go, smash it and do the thing. And then it pretty much stuck. And now it's like required.
Well, I'll tell you, like when Christy's doing interviews, I usually try to stay out of the way. Dude, without fail, you have hit me almost every time with at least a little bit of NOS and almost a can. So maybe do a side eye at me if you see me. Focusing on the racing for this year, you're going to compete for all three USAC national titles, but you're just one title away from being the next Triple Crown driver. And of course, is the midget title. So with that being said, is there more emphasis this year on just the midget title alone than maybe the sprint car, the Silver Crown, or do you distribute your focus equally?
I certainly, really want to go win the midget title, and finish off the Triple Crown deal. Partially for the Triple Crown title is cool, but even just personally, even if there wasn't a Triple Crown title, like I've won the crown, I've won the sprint car, I've competed in the midget for a few years and I haven't won it. So I personally, I want to go finish that one. So yeah, I'm certainly focused on the midget. Certainly putting in some work to make sure that we're as good as we can be there. And Dave with RMS and Lacey, they've been working really, really hard to just make sure, right, that we're as organized as possible, as efficient as possible, and that things can run and operate as smoothly as possible. And then again, kind of there, it's kind of back to me to make sure that the race cars are fast. So I'm, I've been watching a lot of the last couple of years and seeing, kind of trying to pick up on what we did well, what we did poorly race car wise. And then same with me in the seat, right? Like what I did well, what I did bad, what I need to improve on. And to go and try and wrap that one up. So certainly a lot of effort on getting getting that one done over the winter. So I'm excited to get that one started because it's been not getting started forever now. but
This is like our
still,
fourth. We're on like rain out number 4 of the midget
I
season
know,
already.
I know. But so yeah, but all that being said, still, maximum effort on the sprint car. Still, maximum effort on the, really kind of got focused in on the crown program again. The sprint car now, I feel like, as 2022 rolled in, it's kind of a little bit more automated, like Dylan has things so organized and so well, and him and I work so well together. And he kind of knows what I want and where I want things and all that, to where it doesn't, not that it requires less focus from me, but less, maybe a little less attention. So trying to definitely distribute some of that attention to the midget program, and we've kind of revamped the crown program a little bit. So obviously, like the goal at the start of every year is to go out and win all 3 of them. So you can't put one on the back burner if you're gonna win all 3. So definitely focus on the midget, but focus on the other 2 as well. And with the bonuses for winning 2 or winning 3, to go win multiple, but these, right now is a big deal. Go add 150 or 300,000 to your bank account's a good season.
Yeah, no doubt about it. USAC's been really good about adding incentives to win more than one title. Justin, it's been a pleasure. But before I let you go, a few weeks back on Twitter, you posted a thread of your life and your career back in 2013. And when you look back on those pictures and on those moments, is it crazy to you to see where your life and career has gone since then?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, definitely. Like, yeah, and just when I walk into my race shops and things are the way they are, you look around, you're like, man, these race cars are nice, and man, this shop is nice. And even, like, just personally, right. My life is, I've got kids and a wife and a dog and I live in a, I think it's a nice house, and pull in the driveway and it's like, man, I live in a nice house. And man, kind of there's a song, like an old, I don't know if it's a rock song, right? It's from that era of, like, I don't know, the guy, like, is this my house? Is this my wife? He's like, there's some song like that. I don't know. That's about what it feels like.
Oh, well, Justin, thank you so much for your time, and congratulations, I guess, on being the first guest on Non-Wing Worldwide. You could add that with your Silver Crown and Sprint Car title as feathers in your cap.
Thanks for having me, Drake.
All right, that's Justin Grant, reigning USAC National Sprint Car Series champion. Let's now get into our racing roundup segment, starting off with Tanner Thorson, the 2016 USAC National Midget Champion, will make his season debut with the series, as well with everybody else, as it will be the opening weekend for the NOS Energy Drink USAC National Midgets. Thorson will compete at Belleville Short Track and Missouri Sweet Springs Motorsports Complex. Of course, Tanner Thorson, if you remember back to the end of the season last year, started his own midget team with him being an owner driver, and this year he's really turned into quite the owner. Ashton Torgerson drove for him, as well as Rico Abreu earlier this year. So keep an eye out on Tanner Thorson and what he's doing with that new midget team. It's been fun to watch so far. Speaking of more car and driver news, Cody Swanson, who had quite the career with the Palma Motorsports, is back, but with a bit of a twist to it. The 63 is not back. Of course, he's got rides set up for the 2023 season on dirt and pavement, but they do have a major piece of that team coming back. One of the old chassis is going to run with Cody Swanson this season with Doran Binks Racing. That should be really interesting. And in case you're wondering, it is the dirt car. So that's very interesting. Silver Crown is kind of interesting in the sense that you can have old cars return. I remember talking to Brian Gossel. I think his current dirt Silver Crown car is like a Bud Kading car from the mid 2000s. So for whatever the reason, the Crown cars have a really long life, and you're seeing that right now. DePaul Motorsports has not been in the series for quite some time now, and for Doran Binks to lock up a chassis that Cody had so much success with is huge. And last but not least on our racing roundup segment, Holly Sheldon. Yes, Holly Sheldon is making a national midget return. If you remember back, I believe 2016 was her rookie year out here in the Midwest. Ran for a couple of years with Keith Coons Motorsports. She is back, and she is partnering with Bundy Built in a spike chassis and doing 11 races. And it's quite the stretch of races she's doing. She'll start off with the Extreme Outlaw Midgets at Tri-City Speedway in Granite City, Illinois. And then an action-packed USAC National Midget schedule. She's going to run 4 Crown and the entirety of the USAC Western Swing. So definitely interesting. Excited to have Holly Sheldon back. I remember watching Holly race at cycling. One of the defining moments for me watching Holly Sheldon race was her beating Kyle Larson one night at cycling. So really excited to have Holly Sheldon back in the USAC National Midget Ranks and just in a midget in general. So excited to see what Holly can do. But that will do it for us here on the Racing Roundup segment. We'll now get into our race results segment from this past weekend. And one more time, a breakdown of how we'll go through each of the national, regional, and local divisions by car types. We'll start off with the 410 sprint cars, go to 360s, midgets, D2 midgets, focus midgets, spec sprints, ecotech midget, crate sprints, and 305 sprints will be the run of order when it comes to divisions. Actually, no national racing happening this week, and all 3 national series were off with USAC. No Extreme. POWRi, though, did attempt to have a race Saturday night at the Macon Speedway in Macon, Illinois. Unfortunately, that one was lost to weather. As we move into regional, unfortunately, more weather. Snake bit another POWRi series. The POWRi War Sprint Week was at the Moberly Motorsports Park in Moberly, Missouri. Once again, that one did get rained out. The first regional race we do have, though, was the MSCS Sprint Cars. They were at the Tri-State Speedway in Hobstadt, Indiana. Carson Garrett picking up a win. Recently, he's become a bit of a Hobstadt ace. So good to see Carson Garrett pick up the win, former Series Rookie of the Year. Kendall Rubel would have to settle for second, J.J. Hughes third, Chase Stock in fourth, and Kent Schmidt, team principal at KO Motorsports, would round out the top 5. Donnie Brackett would finish 6th, Aiden Schmidt 7th, 8th was Dason Persley, 9th Colin Ambrose, and 10th was Tate Williams and Donnie Brackett hard charger on the evening. And we actually had a doubleheader weekend with the Great Lakes Traditional Sprints presented by Perfit. They would run Friday and Saturday. Friday night would see them at the I-96 Speedway in Lake Odessa, Michigan. Rippin' Ricky Lewis would pick up the win in the 41. Steve Irwin second, Brian Ruhlman third. Fourth went to Parker Fredrickson, and Keith Sheffer Jr. would round up the top 5. Max Frank, Mike Galata was 7th, 8th went to Ian Hunter, 9th Mike Ostrauskas, and 10th went to RJ Payne. And as I said, it was a doubleheader weekend for the Great Lakes Traditional Sprints presented by Perfit. Saturday would see him at the Crystal Speedway in Crystal, Michigan, where once again it'd be Ricky Lewis picking up the win. Steve Irwin would have to settle for second. Parker Fredrickson rounded out the podium. Keith Sheffer Jr. with another top 5 run came home in 4th, and Max Frank rounded out the top 5. Jason Ferguson, Mike Latta, Dustin Daggett, Ian Hunter, and Gary Hayward would round out the top 10. Ricky Lewis not only would pick up the win, but the hard charger, a 10th the first run for the 41+9 on the evening. We got to go all the way down to the ASCS Elite North non-wing sprint cars for our next regional race. They were at the El Paso County Raceway in Callahan, Colorado. Kobe Pierce would pick up the win. Bradley Cox was second, and Ryan Riggs he was third. Gary Land fourth, and Brian Hardman would round out the top 5. Ryan Rader, Joel Mellon, Dylan Riggs, Casey Swain, and Hunter Finney would round out the top 10. And in regional 360 racing action, the USAC West Coast 360 sprint cars were at the Ventura Raceway in Ventura, California. The commotion by the ocean last Saturday night. David Gasper in the 18 and only his second non-wing 360 start would pick up a win against a stout USAC West Coast Sprint Car Series field. Kyle Edwards second, Brody Fusion third, Cody Majors fourth, and Ryan Timmons rounding out the top 5. DJ Johnson making his return to the series would finish 6th, Steve Hicks 7th, Ron LaPlante 8th, Tyler Hazikakin would finish 9th, and Brian Whitley would round out the top 10. And in other USAC 360 non-wing news, the USAC East Coast Sprint Car Series were at the Grandview Speedway in Bechtelsville, Pennsylvania this past week, whereas Steven Dravicki, multi-time USAC East Coast champion, finally coming back to victory lane. Briggs Danner was second, and Ed Aiken round out the podium. Then it was Tommy Kunzman, Joey Mantia, the top 5, Chris Allen, Bruce Buckwalter, Austin Graby, Jonathan Swanson, and JT Ferry rounding out the top 10. Austin Graby with a real impressive charge, 20th to 8th, a plus 12 run for him. Let's go to the southwest part of the United States with the POWRi New Mexico Motor Racing Association. They had a co-sanctioned show with the Sunset Grill POWRi 360 non-wing sprint cars. That, of course, is the Vado Speedway Park local series. And it would make sense why they were sanctioned with them, because they were at the Vado Speedway Park in Vado, New Mexico. Travis Oldfield would pick up the win. Don Grable would finish second. Third went to J.R. Boneseal. Michael Finelli, Justin Zeal, Troy Treharn, Wayne Siddle, Darwin Smith, Spencer Hill, and Sean Deskins rounded out the top 10. And on the pavement side of the things, the NCMA pavement sprint cars pounded some pavement this past weekend at the Madera Speedway, Madera, California. Justin Kawada with yet another win, David Burchett second, and Tony Amador your podium finishers. POWRi West midgets were in action at the Port City Raceway in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And Jonathan Beeson, one of the best in the region, would pick up the win. Taylor Turner was second, and Noah Harris was third. Jeffrey Knoll, Chris Carroll, Michelle Decker, Scout Spraggins, Cade Cowles, Kevin Brewer, and Kyle Jones would round out the top 10. As we continue to bounce around the map and bounce around to a different car type, the USAC Eastern Focus midgets were in action at the Wake County Speedway in Asheboro, North Carolina. Logan Suley would pick up the win, Brady Ullum second, and Mac Leopard would round out the podium. JT Bierman, Hunter Wise, Dakota Armstrong, Eric Lewis, and Chris Lamb would round out the field. On to the General Tire All-Star Circuit of Champions TQ midgets at the Paragon Speedway in Paragon, Indiana. They had their non-wing 410 sprint cars on hand. We'll get to that in a second with our local results. But in General Tire All-Star Circuit of Champions TQ midget action, it was Connor Wolf picking up the win, Ashley Alberson second, Johnny Goff third, Logan Prickett was fourth, and Adam Bullard would round out the top 5. Evan Shadow, Nelson Stewart, Landon Browning, Matthew Hedrick, Connor Bolding would round out the top 10. Nelson Stewart, the hard charger on the evening, plus 5 for the 80 machine. And in Ecotech Midget regional action, the Western Midget Racing Series was at the Ocean Speedway in Watsonville, California. Former USAC Western States Midget champion Blake Bauer would pick up the win. Nate Waite was second. Sage Bornheim was third. Bryant Bell was fourth. Fifth was Todd Hawes. Sixth went to Greg Dennett. Seventh, Sparky Howard. Eighth was Kyle Hawes. Ninth, Doug Johnson. And Logan Mitchell rounding out the top 10. And as I said, it was a doubleheader weekend for the Western Midget Racing Series. Saturday night would see him at the Petaluma Speedway in Petaluma, California. Bryant Bell would pick up the win. John Sorali, Logan Mitchell to the podium. Isaiah Vasquez, Kyle Hawes would round out the top 5. Darren Horton, Rick Faith. Actually, the Petaluma Speedway promoter, Rick Faith, is, and he comes home with a solid 7th place finish. Blake Bauer, Friday night's winner, would come home 8th. 9th went to Sparky Howard, and Todd Hawes would round out the top 10. Nate Waite would lead laps 1 through 1 and 10, but would spin in the lead, hitting the lead to Bryant Bell. Bell would lead from laps 10 to 20 to pick up the win. Logan Mitchell, hard charger on the evening, plus 10. And in crate non-wing sprint car action, the Autometer Wisconsin Wingless Sprint Series was at the Wilmot Speedway in Wilmot, Wisconsin. Clayton Rossman would pick up the win. Alan Haffer was second. Jimmy Suva was third. Fourth went to Ryan Zetsky, and fifth went to Derek Crane. Nathan Crane would finish sixth. Rusty Egan, seventh. Tim Cox, eighth. Ninth, Chris Kamol, and 10th went to Greg Olsed. That's all we have in regional action, but there was a lot of local racing this past weekend. We'll start off at the Bloomington Speedway in Bloomington, Indiana, with their regular Friday night program. The 24 PSI Mahako was back in victory lane. Braden Fox was second, Alex Sipes third, Brandon Spencer fourth, and Brian Hayden rounded out the top 5. Trey Osborne, Brady Short, Sterling Kling, Jeff Ensign, and Jaden Rogers rounded out the top 10. Brian Hayden, your hard charger on the evening, plus 5. Also on Friday night, the Gas City I-69 Speedway in Gas City, Indiana would open up their season with KTJ, Kevin Thomas Jr. picking up the win, Logan Seavey second, and Timez Thomas Meserol rounding out an all-star podium in third. Max Adams was fourth, Colton Cottle fifth, Dustin Ingles sixth, seventh Emerson Axum, eighth Braden Clark, ninth Travis Hery, and 10th went to Kyle Shipley. Now over to the Paragon Speedway as they raced Saturday night. We talked about their show with the All-Star Circuit of Champions TQ midgets. The non-wing 410s were in action, and it'd be national driver CJ Leary picking up the win. Jake Scott, one of the ringers at Paragon, would finish second, and Brandon Spencer round out the podium. Trey Osborne fourth, Isaac Chappell was fifth, Flying Ryan Thomas 6th. And how about Todd Hobson was only in the States for about 48 hours. If you remember back, he's the Aussie non-wing sprint car champion. Got a ride with Joe Daming, and he comes on with the top 10 in his first night. I think he was experiencing a little bit of jet lag. I was talking to him before the feature, and maybe still a little bit of jet lag there, but nonetheless, awesome result for Todd Hobson. Rylan Gray was 8th, Sterling Kling 9th, and Jackson Sloan rounded out the top 10. Ryan Thomas, the hard charger, on the evening. We now head over to the Lincoln Park Speedway in Putnamville, Indiana on Saturday night with their weekly program. Jaden Rogers back in victory lane in the 14. Ty Mahako almost swept the weekend, but he would have to settle for second at Putnamville. Brendan Maddox, a solid run for him. He rounds out the podium in third. Jeff Ensign 4th. Jesse Vermillion 5th. Mario Klauser 6th. 7th went to Blake Vermillion. 8th was Alex Sipes. 9th, Brian Hayden. And 10th was Harley Burns. 2 hard chargers on the evening at Putnamville, Jesse Vermillion and Alex Sipes. Bad news for one local track in Indiana. The Lawrenceburg Speedway in Lawrenceburg, Indiana, unfortunately lost their race to rain. That was all the local racing action in the state of Indiana last weekend. In fact, there was only one more non-wing local race happening in the United States this past weekend. It was at the Petaluma Speedway in Petaluma, California, weekly spec sprint show for them. Sean Argo would pick up the win yet again. He's been on a tear, especially at Petaluma this year. He would lead all 25 laps to do it. Jacob Tuttle was second. Nick Rodfugel was third. Heath Holtzclaw was fourth. And Jerry Kozba was fifth. Day Lint was sixth. Bruno Bianchi was seventh. Eighth was Amber Fields. Ninth, Kevin Cavigliano. And 10th went to Zach Albers. Nick Rodfugel, was your hard charge on the evening. 10th to 3rd plus 7. That's all the racing we have in the United States. We were going to bring you one international race this weekend, the Midget 50-lapper from Eastern Creek Speedway in Sydney, New South Wales, Australia. Unfortunately, that one was canceled for storms. That is all your racing action from this past weekend all around the globe. Let's get into our upcoming racing schedule for this week. We are recording on May the 17th. As usual, Friday is when things really start off. We'll go to the Belleville Short Track in Belleville, Kansas with the USAC NOS Energy Drink USAC National Midgets. Then over to the Circle City Raceway in Indianapolis, Indiana for the Boss Sprints and All-Star Circuit of Champions TQ Midgets. Glenn County Speedway in Mill Hall, Pennsylvania has the USAC East Coast Sprint Car Series. Lee County Speedway in Donaldson, Iowa has the PowerEye IMRA D2 Midgets. Lincoln Speedway in Lincoln, Illinois has Mara Midgets. And in local action on Friday night, Bloomington Speedway in Bloomington, Indiana has their local non-wing 410 sprint cars. On Saturday, a lot of good racing to go around. We'll start off at the Belleville Short Track in Belleville, Kansas for the USAC NOS Energy USAC National Midgets. Belleville High Banks in Belleville, Kansas, same facility has the USAC Silver Crown Series, but 2 different tracks. That's a big distinction there. Thunderbolt Raceway in Tulare, California has the USAC CRA Sprint Cars. Paragon Speedway in Paragon, Indiana has the MSCS Sprints, as well as the United Speed Association Midgets. All-American Speedway in Roseville, California, shout out to Scott Hall, has the NCMA Pavement Sprint Cars. I-44 Riverside Speedway in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma has the PowerEye West Midgets. Eldora Speedway in Rossburg, Ohio has the USAC Midwest Thunder D2 Midgets. That's going to be a good show, special event for them. The Plymouth Third Track in Plymouth, Wisconsin has the Badger D2 Midgets. Placerville Speedway in Placerville, California has the Hunt Magneto's Wingless Tour. Bartholomew County Fairgrounds in Columbus, Indiana has the All-Star Circuit of Champions TQ Midgets. Wilmot Raceway in Wilmot, Wisconsin has the Wisconsin Wingless Series in action. And in local action, the Lincoln Park Speedway in Putnamville, Indiana has their regular Saturday night program. For the first time on Non-Wing Worldwide, we'll have racing on Sunday. The Sweet Springs Motorsports Complex in Sweet Springs, Missouri will feature the USAC NOS Energy Drink USAC National Midgets. And what better place to race at on Sunday than Angel Park Speedway in Sun Prairie, Wisconsin with the Badger D2 Midgets. Angel Park's got a long history of running on Sundays. No racing on Monday, but on Tuesday, the Terre Haute Action Track will be in action with the Amsoil USAC National Sprint Cars. And also the Millbridge Speedway in Salisbury, North Carolina will have the Extreme Outlaw Midgets. That is your upcoming racing schedule from all over the globe. Well, that's all we have for you on this episode of Non-Wing Worldwide. Thank you again to Justin Grant for joining us and spending his time with us on the show. And thanks to you, the race fans, for listening to the Non-Wing Worldwide podcast. The support we've received already has been so great. And we'll see you in the next episode.